And welcome back to the last segment. We'll take calls shortly if you have some thoughts on these topics. And this article is just so funny about the archaeology and how wonderful our current technology is to be able to unearth these things from our distant past. Don't be fooled by this garbage. The real reason that we have these satellites is to spy on other countries. It's to find out where the bunkers are. It's to find out where things are hidden underground. And at the same time, they could be used to determine where the CORIUM is in an ongoing nuclear disaster, the likes of which the world has never seen before. And if you notice, any time a scientist or a nuke expert is interviewed, they never really talk about where the CORIUM is, or they just say that they don't know. Well, many thanks to Loren Murray for bringing this to my attention. We currently have 11 satellites in orbit that are capable of optical imaging using light and sound properties and ground-penetrating radar imaging. And I'll read some of these to you. Now, this project is called NROL-39, and if you've ever seen these NASA patches, this particular patch for these satellites is this giant octopus that's like eating the world, and it says under the patch, nothing is beyond our reach. In 1996, we launched an imaging satellite capable of optical imaging called KH-11. In 1999, we launched a satellite for the MISTY project that is capable of optical imaging. In 2001, we launched another KH-11 satellite capable of optical reconnaissance. In 2005, we launched the LACROSSE project satellite capable of radar imaging. In 2005, we launched the KH-11 component for optical imaging, another one. So we have 3 just from that one program. In fact, in 2011, things really ramped up. We launched another TOPAZ radar imaging set. We launched another KH-11. In 2013, another TOPAZ that could do ground-penetrating radar. And as recently as August 28th of 2013, we launched the most recent optical imaging satellite, again, part of the KH-11 program. Now, do you really think that these 11 satellites were launched to uncover artifacts in Turkey or Guatemala? And we have a caller, Meat Dog, is on the line.
Hey, how's it going? A great show tonight. Really, pertinent information that you're putting out here. I don't want to take up too much time. I have 2 questions. The first one I have is, within a couple weeks after the Fukushima, incident, I started taking, those seaweed pills from a health food store, the kind that has that ingredient in it that helps with iodine or whatever. And that lasted for about 3 months. Should I have continued taking those kelp tablets or taking any kind of health supplement to safeguard against radiation poisoning?
It's really good that you did this right at the beginning of the accident, because that's when the releases were the worst, in the first 3 months of the accident. And some people went even as far as taking potassium iodide if you could get it. And, there's a lot of confusion about taking things that will block the uptake of radioactive iodine to your thyroid. And it's basically what you need to do is work more foods into your diet that are high in potassium and do that every day. Now, We're running into kind of a situation here with the, sea vegetables and kelp and seaweed pills and so forth, because we don't know what's contaminated and what isn't. And there was a place on the in Maine that was testing all of their stuff and reporting online what they were finding, and I haven't seen any updates to their site for the last year. So I don't know if they've stopped doing that, but we really need at least one of these places that sell kelp supplements and, dolce and other seaweed, because, these are so protective. They're so good for your health and your immune system, but we really don't know what isn't contaminated at this point. Obviously it'd be safer to source things from the Southern Hemisphere, or if you can still find things that were harvested before 2011. I happened to have bought like 2 huge containers of seaweed crisps, like for making sushi, that were harvested prior to 2011. But I noticed the other day I took some out because I wanted to put some in a soup that I was making, and I was like, boy, I'm really running low, because when I first bought them, I was like, wow, this will last me forever. These 2 giant containers, and now I'm getting to a point where I'm like running out, and so. I know that there's people that are, in the fishing industry and in these different industries that are paying attention to this and trying to find ways to work around it, because there's no shutting this accident off. And we have this continual nuclear pollution that's going into the ocean. And so we need to really find, answers to that. But there's lots of other foods that are high in potassium, like avocados and nuts and things like that. Fish was a great source of it too, but you now have to be really careful with that. So if you just search out like foods that are high in potassium, you can work more of those into your diet. And I eat an avocado every day pretty much. In fact, I'm really getting sick of avocados, so I'm starting to put them into smoothies and things. But yeah, that's great that you did that. And I know at the time of the accident, I tried to get the pills for my daughter who lives in Salt Lake City, and she ended up getting them from her work because she's a med tech, but we couldn't find them. They were like sold out everywhere. And what we found out later was, the NRC, basically the people that worked for the NRC were buying it up for their families and telling everyone else, oh, you don't need it. Pills in particular are only in extreme emergencies, and they can make people really sick. You can have an allergic reaction to them, and they should never be given to children without a doctor's supervision because of that possible allergic component.
Okay, thanks. My second question is, within weeks after the Fukushima accident, I kept hearing rumors or reading stories that initially I thought were alarmist and fear-mongering. People were saying that the top third of Japan would have to be evacuated, necessitating the evacuation of 50 to 60 million people. What's your opinion on possible mass evacuations of areas of Japan?
Well, if you take just the city of Tokyo, there's 30 million people that live in the greater metropolitan area of Tokyo. That's like combining New York City and Los Angeles, I think. It's logistically impossible to evacuate that many people. In fact, there was a woman named Tacoma Groove from the Pacific Northwest who actually did a math problem showing what it would take flying in jumbo jets continuously 24/7 and evacuating people out of the area. And it would take years to evacuate, the entire city of Tokyo. So, I think people that have, who know what's up have already left, who have the finances to do it. And it's something that is kind of, in the back of my mind, and has been for a while, that even here in the Midwest, we get a lot of exposure because of the jet stream, because we have a marine layer from our Great Lakes that help to facilitate the fallout coming from, going into our coastlines, our coastal areas. And living in the Great Lakes region, like, we have a lot of other contamination issues too. And where the real danger, I think, is going to be in the short term is people that live in highly contaminated environments already from like toxic dumping from industry, or they're downwind of a bunch of nuke plants. They'll have this added factor now of radiation that they're being exposed to. And even if one or the other wasn't enough to make them sick, the two together can be, dozens or hundreds or thousands of times worse to the health of an organism. It's called the multiplier effect. And once you understand how that principle works, then you start looking at places that we know are already contaminated, like areas around Hanford where people have been getting sick for years. Now there's all these babies being born that are having like parts of their brain missing and things like that. And all the scientists are just like, they're so baffled. Oh, we can't understand what's happening here. And it's so ridiculous. They're getting an additional exposure now to Fukushima, and that exposure in and of itself had they been eating healthy food and if they lived in a clean environment and had been filtering their water all of this time, they may not have gotten sick. But if they already have chemical contamination and now they get hit with these rads, then there's this synergy. And we may have seen that already occur at the Malibu High School, which had some horrendous contamination issues from building materials. And now all of a sudden, there were like 6 teachers that were diagnosed with cancer and a lot of students that were getting headaches and getting sick. And they actually had to close that school, and because there was so much sickness in the school while they started testing for things. So we're going to see more of that happen in the short term, where people are already exposed to contamination in their environment. And, LA is a big one because of the Rocketdyne facility and the 3 meltdowns that have occurred there. Now they get hit with Fukushima rads on top of it. It's just too much. It's going to push people's health over the edge.
And then you throw in the wild card of chemtrail spraying, and God knows what the heck is in store for us.
Exactly. And thanks for calling me, Dog. I appreciate it.
There has been a nuclear accident in the Soviet Union, and the Soviets have admitted that it happened. The Soviet version is this. One of the atomic reactors at the Chernobyl atomic power plant in the city of Kiev was damaged, and there is speculation in Moscow that people were injured and may have died. The Soviets may have been fairly quick to acknowledge the accident because evidence in the form of mild nuclear radiation had already reached beyond the Soviet borders to Scandinavia. We begin with ABC's Dean Reynolds.
The first word that something was seriously wrong came from this power plant in eastern Sweden, where workers coming on the job registered abnormally high levels of radiation on their bodies. Although the levels were not high enough to harm humans and no accident had occurred at that plant, it was shut down. And as tests were conducted, similar puzzling reports of high radiation came in from all over Scandinavia. But still, no accidents were reported, leading to the conclusion that the problem was elsewhere, to the east, in the Soviet Union. A fact confirmed to the Soviet people on television tonight.
An official announcement from the Council of Ministers. There has been an accident at the Chernobyl atomic power station. One of the atomic reactors was damaged. The consequences of the accident are being taken care of. Help is being given to the victims of the accident. A government commission has been set up.
The civilian plant in question is in the Ukraine. It's something of a showcase facility, featured here in Soviet Life magazine, which extolled its safety record. It's near the city of Kiev, population 2.5 million, and about 1,000 miles from Scandinavia, meaning that whatever did occur there, a radioactive cloud headed north across Poland today and into Denmark, where radiation levels were 5 times normal, to Finland 6 times normal, to Norway up 50%, and Sweden illegally high.
It's almost certainly the most severe accident that has ever taken place in the short history of civilian nuclear power.
When the worst American nuclear accident occurred at 3 Mile Island, most leaking radiation was kept inside the containment building. Unlike this Soviet accident, where radiation has been measured 600 to 1,000 miles away.
The TMI accident was nothing compared with this. I would speculate that it was very serious. And the reason for that is that they've observed radiation levels 10 times normal from Finland all the way down to Stockholm.
Mackenzie says the type of radioactive material spotted could only come from the core, meaning the accident was a meltdown or something comparable. At 3 Mile Island, there was a partial meltdown. The loss of cooling water led to fuel getting so hot it melted, but the core was contained by that thick concrete containment building. In the Soviet accident, there would be nothing to stop a meltdown. The hot core could have melted right into the earth. There are indications the accident could have happened several days ago. It would take that long for radiation to drift to Scandinavia and to make the political decision to announce it.
You can be sure that the decision to disclose was made at the very highest level, undoubtedly by Gorbachev himself, and probably it took several days for the Soviet leaders to decide how to handle it.
Officially, little comment from the president or his aides.
As far as the United States is concerned, we don't see any dangerous situation.
The Soviets claim this is their first nuclear accident, but it's known in 1958 a nuclear explosion killed several hundred and left a large area contaminated some 800 miles east of Moscow. Washington sources speculate the accident at Chernobyl had to be very bad, or else the Soviets would never have acknowledged it. Roger Peterson, ABC News, Washington.